The Ninth Amendment is where the power starts. It starts with the people. The people give up a small bit of power to government in order to advance general welfare and the common. They give that up to the states in turn give it up to the federal government. Now, people will say, well, if Donald Trump was promoting peace, then why did we go into the Strait of Hormuz and attack Iran? Well, remember that long train of abuses? Iran has been the worldwide sponsor of terrorism for decades. They have a president who said, I've had a gutful. You're done. I am going to wreck your country to the point where you're going back to the Stone Age, because that's where you belong if you are going to be feral human beings. In the interest of promoting peace, what do? You have to take out the people who interfere with peace. That would be Iran.
Still a chance that we can get everybody on planet Earth, not just people in the States, but even people abroad, to come out of poverty?
I do. I think that's where we're headed. And that's where Donald Trump is applying pressure to accelerate the spread of Hamiltonian economics. And that's why the British Crown and the City of London are desperate to stop him.
For example, you know about the straw man. I'm sure you're very well versed. I made a movie about that, Dear Mr. President Part 2, Show Me the Money. It's thousands and thousands and thousands of people have purchased the movie already. And it's spreading like wildfire. People are calling me saying, hey, can I have a party in my living room? Can I watch it more than once? Yes, of course. Are we ever going to see any of that money? Senator, are we going to see a reset this year?
I think we're living in it, Mel. I think that we are going to hit a point. I think it's going to be this summer. We're going to hit a point where the floodgates finally break, and we're going to see a significant rise in cryptocurrency. I want to be careful with this term, value, because value we have to judge against something else.
A structure so deeply embedded, most of those inside it don't even realize what they are a part of. Institutions you trusted operating within a framework you were never meant to question. And while you worked, struggled to survive, something bigger was moving behind the curtain. In this documentary, we exposed the largest financial deception in the history of mankind. Not with options, but with evidence. Irrefutable, irrevocable, undeniable. This is not about politics. This is about power. This is about control. And most importantly, this is about you. Because the moment you truly see it, the illusion collapses. The distractions lose its grip. The noise disappears. And the question becomes unavoidable. When this film is released, the truth will no longer be hidden. It will be undeniable, uncontainable, unstoppable. My job is to expose it. Your job is to make sure the world sees it. Now, will you have the courage to face it, to share it, to break free from the system that was designed to keep you enslaved forever? Or will you ignore the greatest revolution of our time? The truth is here. You will either stand up and help us dismantle the Matrix, or the Matrix will enslave you and your family for 1,000 years to come. The choice is yours. God knows I did my job. Well, folks, we got Senator Finchem, Arizona Senator. Welcome to the Mel Carmine Show. It's been quite some time. Let's talk about Trump going to China, getting an incredible reception. Let's talk about Russia, Ukraine. Let's talk about the oil, Iran, Israel. I thought Israel was going to be last. I don't know what's going to happen now, but I think Cuba might be last for all I know. But this absolutely has everything to do with the reset. And I know you're part of the Clarity Act. Maybe you'll shed some light on that as to exactly where we're at with the Clarity Act, if you feel optimistic or pessimistic. And I know you're a crypto holder, you're an XRP holder, you're a cryptocurrency new financial system advocate. Welcome to the show, brother. It's been a while.
Thank you very much, Mel. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Yes.
Love the chair, love the glasses.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, man, there has been so much going on. And, I know a lot of your listeners are not history fans other than recent history. They see what's going on in the media, I don't know, since 2020, 2024, some of them yesterday. But there's so many things to talk about right now. And I think you mentioned the reset. You mentioned Cuba. So I think perhaps we ought to take just a minute and revisit the grounding of all this and the economic system, because usually you and I end up talking about cryptocurrency and XRP specifically, but beyond Bitcoin. In fact, we got a book coming out. John Gotts and I have a book coming out. Actually, I think we've broken it up into 4 books because it's like 10,000 words. I mean, it's pretty heavy in subject, but it primarily talks about crypto fair value, CFV, and why that's needed. But let's go back a little bit in history, if you don't mind, and talk about how did our monetary system move from a national banking system? People remember the movie It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart, which, by the way, I think was a propaganda film to push upon America faith and reliance on the Federal Reserve System, which is neither federal nor is it a reserve. It's all part of an international banking cartel. And it's part of what I'm going to call, and what I know that my friends at Promethean call the colonial looting machine that was launched it had its seeds, believe it or not, in Yorktown. 1778, I think, when we accepted the surrender of Cornwallis's army. They were that was the fall of the British Empire, or so we thought. And then we had the War of 1812, where the British wanted to reassert their authority. They got their asses kicked again, not without suffering some losses. But the British and the Dutch and the French have always been about subjugating other nations, going into a nation and essentially pillaging that nation for what they could get out of it, and then leaving death and destruction in their path. Well, the United States was never about that. And all of these clowns that want to push Marxism say, oh, you're a colonialization country. No, actually, the United States is one of the only, in fact, I think the only country that goes into another country, creates an infrastructure, creates jobs, creates wealth, and doesn't just take the natural resources, but actually pays for them. In fact, look at some of the wars that we've gotten involved in. The countries like Iraq, they basically get to keep the money they make off of oil, even though we spent treasure, lives, time, resources on a war that we probably never should have been in. It was a manufactured war. In fact, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of 9/11, but the whole thing was a fraud.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna dishonor the men and women that lost their lives over that. But I'm pretty sure Dick Cheney is burning in hell right now.
Oh, there's no question.
For what he had, that some bitch is swimming in a lake of fire.
Yeah.
So, but let's talk a little bit for a moment, because this really has a bearing on cryptocurrency and why we have arrived at the point we've arrived at today. So you've got the British system and you have the American system. And a lot of people probably have never heard of Bretton Woods, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the British colonial system, basically it was colonial looting. You'd go in, you'd invade a country, take their stuff, leave them with nothing but holes in the ground and dead people. And, oh, by the way, you're going to be part of the British Empire. That ain't working out so well for them now. They thought that the Americans thought that we had rejected colonial looting, but unfortunately, the British city of London, and I'm not talking about the city, I'm talking about the city of London as an organization, essentially has infiltrated the American government. And this is fact, this is not fiction. There are British agents who have a loyalty to the crown as opposed to a loyalty to the United States. If that were not the case, why on earth did Congress allow the King of Great Britain to come in and speak, where the President of the United States has traditionally been the only one to speak.
Good question.
That's kind of odd. And then has the balls to go in there and mean mouth our president as though he had some kind of standing in this world. When I say this world, I'm talking about North America. You're a visitor here. Why don't you mind your manners and mind your mouth? Well, I think Melania had the perfect response to that in setting up a beehive at the White House. Now, a lot of people don't know the significance of that, but when there is a change in leadership in British culture, there's a new queen bee and a new beehive that is established while the old beehive is basically torn apart and dismissed. So you kind of got that going on. So back around 1944, well, it was before 44 because we're talking about FDR. Franklin Delano Roosevelt actually was a fan of Hamiltonian, that'd be North American economic systems. And that is where it's a system that's built on, and I'm borrowing from the folks at Promethean right now. I want to make sure that I give them credit. Masterful piece. If people want to know about it, they can visit my Substack, markfinchem.substack.com. I wrote a piece on it not long ago, and I'll probably write another piece on it because it is very, very prescient in what we are going through right now. But essentially, the British East India Company is all about globalization. And for those of you who did not pay attention in high school history, world history, the East India Company was behind slavery, drug trafficking, tobacco trafficking. It was basically had a blessing by the crown to do anything it needed to do to bring home a profit, pure profit motive. That's what they were all about. Versus the Hamiltonian system that was focused on, and this is the brilliance of our founding fathers. And this is why it's so important in our 250th anniversary. President Trump is very, very enlightened to name this year of all years the launch of America's golden age. It's his intention to return to Hamiltonian economics. That means goodbye, Fed. That means let's return to national banking instead of centralized banking. So I'm going to use this metaphor. In America, the thing that makes our economy, our national economy, so resilient is that we are not dependent upon a few big corporations. Instead, we have a broad-based small business architecture. Okay, America was formed about decentralizing power and authority, where Europe is all about centralization. They want to bring it all together. European Union, by the way, a construct of the Bank of International Settlements, but we'll get to that in a minute. So what is America all about? National banking under sovereign authority, sovereign control, okay? And who's the sovereigns? You, me, all of our countrymen.
Sovereign citizens, right.
Well, I don't want to go down the sovereign citizen path, but each one of us is sovereign. Think about the U.S. Constitution.
Right.
Everybody talks about the federal government supremacy clause and the 10th Amendment. We don't hear much about the 9th Amendment. The 9th Amendment is where the power starts. It starts with the people. The people give up a small bit of power to government in order to advance general welfare and the common interest, okay? They give that up to the states. The states, in turn, give it up to the federal government. So we have the 9th, 10th, and then we have the Constitution, right? So we're looking at national banking, and I'll come back to that one in a second because that's where the tie-in is with cryptocurrency. But fair and reciprocal trade, including tariffs to kind of balance the books, okay? President Trump has done everything he can, but agents of the British Crown who are embedded in the U.S. government have done everything they can to thwart him. And I'm talking about Congress. I'm talking about the judiciary. I'm talking about the executive branch. Brennan comes out and says, we have enough resistance in place in the federal government architecture that we'll be able to push back on Trump. Hey, you traitorous son of a bitch, you need to swing from a yardarm. If you're interfering with the operations of the legitimately elected president of the United States, that's treason. That is outright treason. And you should swing from a yardarm in the Navy Yard publicly. I'd pay to see that. Pay-per-view, bro. We'll pay down the national debt. Then, of course, America's about promoting peace. Now, people will say, well, if Donald Trump was promoting peace, then why did we go into the Strait of Hormuz and attack Iran? Well, remember that long train of abuses? Iran has been the worldwide sponsor of terrorism for decades. They have a president who said, I've had a gutful. You're done. I am going to wreck your country to the point where you're going back to the Stone Age, because that's where you belong if you are going to be feral human beings. And that's exactly what he's doing. Now, what they try to play the game in the Strait of Hormuz. They are at a critical point right now. Many people probably don't know this. If an oil well doesn't have oil pulled off of it and it begins to sit idle, the engineering behind it causes that well to basically implode. Well, they've cut off their nose to spite their face because they can't ship oil out. Now we have an embargo and a quarantine on Iran. They can't do anything with it. What are they doing? They're putting oil in barrels in the back of pickup trucks in an effort to get it out of the country across land to get it someplace so that their oil wells don't have to shut down. The war that President Trump is engaged in has been a masterful stroke, yet the media is not going to give him credit for it. But what happened? What happened before that, though? And why is it important to America? We went into Venezuela.
Right.
What did we do? What did America do? What did American oil companies do in Venezuela years ago?
The oil flow. We stopped the oil flow from going to our enemies.
Well, no, let's go back even further. So when Venezuela was a capitalist state before Hugo Chavez, American oil companies went in and built infrastructure.
Correct.
Including refinery, pumping, oil wells, distribution channels.
Now.
Yeah. Well, between Chavez and Maduro, they ran it into the ground.
Yeah.
So now the president has gone in and jerked out Maduro, who's singing like a songbird about election interference all over the world. And he's basically taking down what the city of London has been building for decades, centuries, actually.
Is he going to go free because he's singing like a bird? Is he going to go to like some?
Oh, no. He's getting the choice between Supermax in Colorado and a country club in New Jersey. That's how that's playing. All right. So in the interest of promoting peace, what do you have to do? You have to take out the people who interfere with peace. That would be Iran. Notice what has happened now all around the world. With the Strait of Hormuz being closed down, who is most impacted by no oil flow? It ain't the U.S. Very little of our oil came from the Strait of Hormuz, if any. China's in the hurt box. North Korea's in the hurt box. And a whole bunch of countries in the European Union. So we have what I'm going to call the Donroe Doctrine, a modification of the Monroe Doctrine to solidify America's position in the Western Hemisphere. From Greenland all the way down to Argentina. Milei, very good friend of the president, he was able to, in months, pull Argentina out of a bankrupt nation and make them profitable. Amazing when you actually get out of the way and let a capitalist Hamiltonian kind of structure take place. So now we're at that point where President Trump has essentially said, he fired a shot across NATO's bow, 6 years ago? Said, you guys are going to start paying for your own defense, a token payment of 5%. We're done. They apparently didn't believe him. Well, now they're eyeball deep in this war with Ukraine, which is nothing but a money laundering operation for the Democrat Party here in the United States. Okay. And you've destroyed innumerable businesses and properties and taken millions of lives. Why? A real leader, and General Flynn this is one of my favorite statements that he has made so often. War is the failure of diplomacy. Donald Trump doesn't want to go to war with Russia. He doesn't want to go to war with China. In fact, not only does he not want to he wants to make peace. Yeah. He's on Chinese soil right now with 17 of the highest power businessmen in the United States. Well, because 18 would have been too many. No, they're key business leaders. They're key leaders that have the intellect to understand we don't have to be at war. See, the money changers, and this all goes hand in hand with the colonial looting Crown in the city of London, they funded both sides. In fact, here's a grand example. So the Bank of International Settlements was started by Great Britain and Germany before World War II. So there's a guy by the name of Montague Norman on the British side, and then Hamar Chott was the German banker. By the way, that's the same guy that was in charge, I think, he was in charge of the Reichsbank, and then, I forget the name of the company, it'll come to me, that made Zyklon B. And IG Farben, they ran Auschwitz. So don't you find that kind of odd that the British were in bed with the Germans during World War II with the Bank of International Settlements, which was really nothing more than a way for the British Crown to manage global finance. Okay.
Did you know
that's not peace?
Yeah. Did you know that the Bank of International Settlements owns 10% of Ripple?
Yeah. Well, hey, they know what's coming.
Yeah.
When you see those kinds of purchases, pay attention. They know what's coming. That's the new frontier. Okay. So now we've got a nation. America by nature wants to be a peaceful nation, except the defense, finance, industrial complex. They want to supply both sides, which, by the way, that's what the international bankers did during World War I, World War II. They want to supply armaments to both sides so that they can maximize profit. Didn't give a damn about people dying or property destroyed. They just wanted these stuff go boom. Okay. So here's some of the other things that are part of the Hamiltonian structure of the U.S. Opposition to drug and human trafficking. We got people all over this country that have served in a sandbox that are engaged in, the military, engaged in human trafficking interdiction. They're out there rescuing children and adults, not just here in the United States, but worldwide. They're jerking kids out of captivity who are being trafficked for sex and organs and everything else. So we've got a natural repulsion, I think, within this nation, except for the radical left that wants, they have no morals. Then, of course, and it's even in our Constitution, investment in mental capital, which is kind of measured as how much did we pour into the relative population. And when I say mental capital, we talk about copyright and trademark in our Constitution. I don't see that in any other constitutions around the world. It's because Hamilton and our framers recognize the importance of intellect, of ideas. I mean, look at all of the massive inventions that have come out throughout the world. And I can't just say that it's just America. I mean, here's a great example. Low impact sprinkler systems for farming came out of Israel. They don't have a lot of fresh water to waste. Okay. Well, we now use that here in the United States to manage how much water we're putting on a field, where we used to have sprinklers that just threw it all over the place. Now we're very managed, very measured for fresh water. And then, of course, there's another piece that is part of the Hamiltonian structure. No limits to growth, no artificial limits on gross domestic product. Now, if we were not interfering with other countries and they were just all left to themselves to generate their products and use their intellectual capital and really come out with things, we would see a worldwide explosion of wealth. Poor people would be a thing of the past.
Do you think that there's still a chance that we can get everybody on planet Earth, not just people in the States, but even people abroad, to come out of poverty?
I do. I think that's where we're headed. And that's where Donald Trump is applying pressure to accelerate the spread of Hamiltonian economics. And that's why the British Crown and the City of London are desperate to stop him.
Right. For example,
because
you know about the straw
he's interfering with their cash flow.
Yeah. For example, you know about the straw man. I'm sure you're really very well versed. I made a movie about that, Dear Mr. President Part 2, Show Me the Money. It's thousands and thousands and thousands of people have purchased the movie already. And it's spreading like wildfire. People are calling me saying, hey, can I have a party in my living room? Can I watch it more than once? Yes, of course. Are we ever going to see any of that money, Senator? Are we ever going to see any of that money? Is that money ever going to get released? It's our money.
Yeah, I believe so. There's going to be some steps to it, but I believe so. So here's one of the things that I find really interesting. And we've talked about this a little bit before, but never really gone down the rabbit hole. Cryptocurrency is actually fighting the apparatus of the New World Order.
Yes.
And one of the key signals, you just put your finger on it. Bank of International Settlements bought them some crypto. Well, they ain't the only ones. U.S. Treasury. Okay. So there are some signals. And do I think that we're seeing an artificial pressure, downward pressure on the price of crypto? Yeah, because they're scared to death of a run on the bank. I mean, I don't know why they would be, because they've already done their own run on the bank. Okay, to be fair, that's why you see the U.S. dollar falling in value and gold becoming more expensive to acquire. You know, I talked about this at your first summit. People think that when gold goes to $4,000 an ounce, I don't even know what it's at. It's probably higher than that now. That the U.S. it costs more. That means gold's worth more. No, that means the paper, the fiat currency, is worth less. That's why it takes more of it to acquire the same weight of gold. So until you understand that concept, you're going to struggle with the whole cryptocurrency thing. Now, one of the things that I'm very proud to be a part of, John Wright Gotts came up with a formula, and I don't have the formula in front of me. I probably should have prepped a little better for the show, but crypto fair value. In fact, it's actually inculcated into a bill. I think the bill number I've got here in Arizona is Senate Bill 1649, maybe. I'll look it up. But what that does is it puts into law a formula to calculate cryptocurrency fair value, CFV. And when you look at the number of tokens that are out there, the market cap, the number of trades in a 30-day period, you start to get this picture of how healthy is this cryptocurrency. And it's applicable to every single one of them, by the way. So when you see these wild movements of Bitcoin, for example, what causes that? Is it emotional or is it rational?
I think it's more emotion. I think it's people trading, buying, selling, etc.
Bingo. So CFV creates a rational measure so that you don't get caught up in this emotion. Oh my God, Bitcoin's going to go to 120. I better buy right now because it's 89,000.
Yeah.
And what happens? It drops to 79,000. You bought on emotion.
Yeah.
So what we've tried to do with the whole cryptocurrency fair value thing is to bring a rational approach at scoring the safety and security of that particular cryptocurrency. And it works for XRP, Dash, Bitcoin, all of them. Just a second, I'm going to look up this bill number here if I can real quick. In fact, I'm going to send you something, Mel, that you can put up if you want.
Yeah.
It's in WhatsApp. So as we look at the cryptocurrency fair value standard, what we're trying to do is create a standard that people can look to make rational decisions as opposed to decisions that are based on the whims of people you don't even know who are in panic mode because they think something's about to happen, when truthfully, no, nothing that would have.
Is that the one?
Yeah, that was from our digital gold thing yesterday. Now, digital gold isn't available yet, but we were talking yesterday about the digitalgoldfoundation.org. And Senate Bill 1649 and the CFV coin fund. So one of the things that we were trying to do in that Senate bill, number one, is permit. This is not prescriptive, it's permissive. So there's two different kinds of legislation. By the way, in case people don't know, I'm a state senator in Arizona. There are two kinds of legislation. One is prescriptive, which means you shall do this. The other is permissive. You may do this, okay? What we're trying to do is position the state treasurer so that he or she, whoever it may end up being, has the authority to acquire cryptocurrency. Now, the current state treasurer and her team and a couple of past state treasurers have all said, well, why would I try to acquire something if I cannot recreate the process for setting its value? The US dollar, the fiat currency we have, value of that is set by the Fed. Okay, you've got a structure there. Cryptocurrency, we don't have that. So with CFV, we introduced the concept of having a set formula that people can look at, they can plug the numbers in, and whether you're in the US, Canada, or Australia, the numbers are always going to be the same. So once we get there, now the state treasurer, in fact, we've got state treasurers all over the country who are looking at this. Now we get to that place where we have adoptability. State treasurer says, yeah, you can pay your taxes with Bitcoin. Wait, what? So here's a funny little thing I found out back in Thanksgiving. We were doing a podcast with Joel, the guy that is behind Dash. And he said, well, I had said something about how operable the cryptocurrencies are in the marketplace. And he says, well, click on Dash and you'll see you can buy groceries at Target and Wild Wings, at Buffalo Wild Wings. Sure as shooting, I clicked on it. And in Prescott, Arizona, little bitty community, 42,000 people. We're a ranching community. I can pay for groceries. I don't know if Planet Fitness accepts it or not, but several restaurants, several major department stores and grocery stores accept Dash. Well, they also accept Bitcoin. So funny little story, as we're doing this, Joel said, well, get the app and click on it and show me your QR code. So I put it up on the screen and I said, hey, Bob, he says, I'm going to send you $1 just so you can see how it works. Okay. I said, hey, everybody that's watching us, we probably had 1,000 people watching the show. I said, why don't you all send me $1 and I'm going to give it to the Paulden Food Bank. We raised $865 in that day. I made up the difference and we gave them, the Paulden Food Bank is a little bit of community of maybe 1,200 people. It's just a little burg out in the middle of nowhere in Arizona. Gave them a check for $1,000 right after Thanksgiving. We couldn't get it to the bank fast enough. But the after effect of that, they were able to feed a whole bunch of people in the community. And now they're believers in cryptocurrency. Not that they have money that they can spend on it, but they're getting the idea that it's an alternative to green money, fiat currency. That was just one demonstration of the power of adoptability. So now we've got the state treasurer. If this bill actually passes out of the House, which last time I checked, it's been read before the committee of the whole. They're waiting to vote on it, partly because the crazy woman who's in charge of the Arizona executive branch, Katie Hobbs, has already said that she's going to veto all bills.
Right.
And we believe her because that's what she's done for the last 3 years, which would be a tragedy because we already have businesses that are accepting Bitcoin, XRP, not digital gold yet, but that's probably going to happen soon, and other forms of cryptocurrency. I mean, if you were to go to my website for my campaign, votefinchem.com, we accept Bitcoin.
Why not XRP?
So it is becoming, well,
Not yet?
Not yet. I mean, with the service
You're not
we're
allowed
using.
to let the cat out of the bag. Be honest with me. I mean, because there's like this thing like, hey, you're not allowed to talk about XRP. That's like, we talk about that later.
No, because Bitcoin is the most robust at this point, it's the only one that our financial processing center is willing to stand behind. But it's coming.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Earlier, you said something about them swinging from the rope and we should buy a ticket on pay-per-view and pay off the debt. First of all, the debt was created out of thin air. Okay, so they basically printed a bunch of phony money that we have been paying taxes on, been slaving over, and they've had the robots for 40, 50 years for sure. They're just rolling it out now, the artificial intelligence, the robots. I saw a movie about this when I was in grammar school in 7th grade, okay, in Carlstadt, New Jersey. True story. And so they're rolling it out now because it's the right time for them. It's their convenience, right? So why even pay them back? Why wouldn't Donald Trump, do a gangster move on them, say, fuck you, we're not paying you shit because you printed the money out of thin air. We paid you a bunch of taxes. As far as we're concerned, we're done. Get the hell out of here. Do you think he might do that?
Well, I don't know that he would do that because it's based on the full faith and credit of the United States government.
Right.
But the Fed has worked itself into a pretty interesting position. We don't need the Fed.
That's a fact. The Mel Carmine Show begins in just 1 minute. Support the movement. Visit QFS1776.com for exclusive one-of-a-kind merch that makes a powerful statement. Protect your wealth. Cash is trash. Go to carminesgold.com and secure real assets, silver, gold, delivered anywhere in the U.S. Text Mel at 786-704-8817. Looking to acquire XRP? Minimum is $10,000 investment. And there is no limit, even up to $100 million worth. Again, text Mel with full details at 786-704-8817 and allow up to 24 hours for a response. And if by chance you're visiting Cape Canaveral or you are a local, visit stayingalive.com, alive with 2 E's, and recharge your body at the cellular level. The show with your host, Mel Carmine, starts right now.
The Federal Reserve. Now, until we have a system where employers will pay their employees with, XRP,
It's coming.
I think the Fed's on life support, in my view.
Yes.
There are people that would call me crazy, but
No.
because we see an alternative financial system, and that's kind of where I was going with this, Mel.
Yeah.
Cryptocurrency is now in direct competition with the New World Order pushing for not distributed management of wealth, but consolidated management wealth. I mean, you got these two models, okay? The Crown, the European Union, built by none other than the Bank of International Settlements, and I would probably say that there's still a whole bunch of Nazis that are part of that. How about that one? Yeah. So you've got the Hamiltonian structure, which unlimited growth, fair market trade. We want to see everybody succeed. By the way, it's biblically based. Pay the workman his wage. Yeah. Then you've got the system that says, oh no, it's all mine. Okay. Which system do you think is going to enjoy popular support?
Of course. It's obvious.
Right. Okay.
But, yeah. Keep going.
Well, so we're now at this place where cryptocurrency is in direct competition with the New World Order.
Yeah.
President Trump has basically told the New World Order, pound sand. If you want fuel, you're going to have to defend yourselves in the Strait of Hormuz. We're done.
Absolutely.
Except for our friends need a little bit of help. So look at what has happened to OPEC over the last 2 weeks. It's falling apart. UAE withdrew.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Saudis have withdrawn, but it was reported here several days ago that they were looking at it. That's where I think the Don Roe doctrine is now in that place where we are separating ourselves from the New World Order. Keep in mind, the United States was formed out of 13 colonies voluntarily. We came together because we had a common interest. We had a deep desire to escape the orbit of the crown. The European Union, by the way, the American states, that was organic. It happened naturally. The people had such a desire to do it. The European Union, not so much so. That was formed by the Bank of International Settlements because they wanted to have an alternative to the United States in Europe. Wasn't that interesting? So you got the banksters, the gangsters in the banks are driving the bus instead of the people. We're going to pull all these together and we're going to have a European Union. You're going to try and do a fake United States.
Senator, are we going to see a reset this year, you think? In your honest
opinion? I think we're living in it, Mel.
We're going to see a reset by July 4th, something that's going to be move the needle to like $10 on XRP, for example, or $20.
I think that we are going to hit a point. I think it's going to be this summer. We're going to hit a point where the floodgates finally break, and we're going to see a significant rise in cryptocurrency. I want to be careful with this term, value, because value we have to judge against something else.
Gotcha.
Okay. That's why the CFD model is coming along, in my estimation, at the perfect time. Because what is going to happen to that guy who's got 10 grand sitting in his savings account of Federal Reserve notes, which, by the way, anybody that knows banking knows that a note is evidence of debt.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Where do you think the dinars and the zims and the dongs and all this paper currency, when the reevaluation comes, we can't say, okay, we're going to revalue everybody, but forget Iraq and Vietnam. We're going to leave those guys alone. Is it possible that, that we're sitting also on some paper currency that is going to have some value in the near future?
To steal from one of my economist friends, capital doesn't have a conscience. It doesn't care where it goes. It is seeking a safe harbor. The idea is that capital is going to go the place where it's most welcome. And if that means that, whatever currency they have if it's the yuan or the yen in Japan or whatever those currencies are, when you start seeing those currencies move into cryptocurrency, that's a reset.
Yeah.
And I think that, as I started to say, I don't think we're going to see this flood that happens in an instant.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about trillions of dollars in capital that is going to flow into something that people have been excited about, they've been waiting on, but they are going to have trepidation about, okay, is now the right time?
Right. Okay. I'm going to switch gears with you a little bit, and I want to talk to you about Donald Trump visiting China in advance. He went earlier than he was supposed to. He went there with 17 of the top CEOs in the world, United States. And the mainstream media has led us to believe that we are not very well liked in China, that Trump is not very well liked in China. Well, I think we saw a completely different thing when he got there. I mean, we saw everything short of dancing horses and parades in the streets, right? So what do you make of it? Was that the whole bullshit story? Or are they actually working together because they realize that the planet has to evolve? We have to do the reset. We have to do it properly. And they may as well put their heads together and work together to make this work. Because at the end of the day, falling nuclear bombs is at no benefit to anybody, right? So what do you think transpired? Or is the mainstream media just plain out lying to us? Because they've been painting this nasty picture about Donald Trump and Xi Jinping and the Chinese hating Donald Trump. What I saw, what you saw, what the world saw is a completely different picture.
Yeah. So I'm not going to call them mainstream media because you're more mainstream than they are. Okay. I will call them legacy media.
Yeah.
They're agents for a foreign government. They want to see America fail. They want to see Donald Trump fail.
Of course.
They don't want to see America succeed. They don't want to see Donald Trump succeed. They delight in tearing people down. They do not delight in building people up. So once again, let's talk about the democratization of media. You got the stranglehold of what some people call mainstream media, legacy media, CBS, NBC, ABC, all the three-letter chumps that the FCC has issued licenses against for. And by the way, I think the FCC is now revisiting some of that licensure to say, hold on, if you're going to lie to the American people, we're going to revoke your license, because part of your license is you have to act in the best interest of the people. Lying to them is not in their best interest. Right. Jake Tapper. Okay. And all the other clowns, not my monkeys, not my circus, but I definitely know all the clowns. Yeah. So you've got the consolidated stranglehold media, and then you have what? The distributed mainstream media. Here's that model again. You have consolidation, you have distribution of power. So going back to our framers, I mean, this thing is so elegantly simple. It is wash, rinse, repeat. If you look at the distribution of power versus the consolidation of power, what do you have? The consolidation of the media, the distribution of the media. We have now got a plethora of expertise out in the podcast world. You look at guys like hat tip to Mike Benz. That guy is nothing short of awesome. He was in the State Department watching all of this, calls them out with regularity. That's just one guy. And then you look at people like yourself, the Juan Saban, you've got, I mean, the list is so long of channels that are out there. That is the democratization of information flow. Sam Anthony at yournews.com. That guy has exploded that paper, online paper, in growth. That is the new mainstream media. So when we go back to the consolidated legacy media beating up Donald Trump, the only people that are paying attention to that are the people with TDS.
And they ain't seen nothing yet, Senator. Wait until Tube 1776 comes out. And it's coming. It's going to come like a fucking locomotive train, and you're not going to be able to stop it. Let's talk about the fact that, first of all, you and I haven't talked in a while. So some months we talk 2-3 times in a month, and some months we don't talk at all. Right? You called me out of the blue yesterday. I said, hey, let's do a show. He goes, when? I said, tomorrow. Boom. You called me and you said something. I think it was you. You said that Cuba may very well become the 51st state. Let's talk about that.
Well, Cuba stands between Venezuela and Florida. Cuba has suffered under the Marxist lifestyle, which I'm going to call government rape, for what, since 1957? I forget when the Cuban 61, when Fidel Castro basically overthrew the legitimate government. Now, I'm not saying Juan Batista was all that in a bag of chips. What I'm saying is the people have suffered under a regime that, I mean, the Iron Curtain came down, and look at what has happened to formerly East Germany. It's exploding in growth. The people were conditioned to believe that it couldn't be this, and now they're seeing for reals. It's like, wait a minute, we can do this? And by the way, that whole negotiated thing between Great Britain and the Nazis, I was part of it. Okay. So do I think that I would, if I were going to go to PolitiBet and bet Puerto Rico versus Cuba,
you bet on Cuba.
Which one will become the next state in the United States? I would bet on Cuba.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, they got really cool beaches in Cuba. They got amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I've been to the Caribbean many times.
Oh, brother, it would be, I've not been to Bora Bora.
In 5 years, you would not recognize Cuba.
Oh, I would say in 3.
Probably.
In 3. So think about this for a second. You've got all of these older buildings. This would be a destination place for history.
Absolutely.
What do they got to do? All they need to do is upgrade their electricity and their water and wastewater handling.
How about we just bring free energy technology? We have it. Why don't we just release it?
Well, you unleash energy in a big way to Cuba, I mean, you look at Greenland, for example. There's another one that we're eyeballing. Geothermal.
Right.
You sink a couple of straws in the ground. Within 6 months, you've got a plant built that's providing so much electricity, Greenland's going to have free power forever.
Right.
All right. So you look at Cuba, it's a destination place to begin with. and you start looking at their infrastructure, certainly they're going to have some things done, roads, bridges, canals, electrical infrastructure, telecom, all of that stuff. And you're going to have to break down all of the former Soviet Union crap that probably doesn't work anyhow. And I would suggest to them, don't become another California and put a road everywhere. Try to maintain the flavor of the nation and maybe restrict the number of people who can come in and, as far as tourism goes, because there's going to be a reason why people want to go there.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you're also going to have a flood of expatriates want to go home.
There's going to be a lot of Cubans once America owns Cuba will go home in probably a nanosecond. There's no question about that.
Yeah. So quite frankly, I would love to see that for my Cuban brothers and sisters.
Absolutely.
It just
while we are
that would bring tears to my eyes to see that happen.
Yeah. While we are on the subject, Donald Trump wants to take over Greenland. He wants to take over Canada. It looks like, at least from the outside looking in, it looks like there's going to be 7 kingdoms and Donald Trump is going to become a king. And it looks like maybe he's going to appoint Trump Jr. or Eric Trump to be the next king. Or if we don't move in that direction, will we see a Senator Finchem running for the White House?
No, that'll never happen. I know my lane. Well, number one, I disagree with the notion of kings. President Trump is going to be another George Washington.
Okay.
Once he's done with reformatting the American economy, and I think this is going to be Bretton Woods 2.0, where we're going to get back on the gold standard. I mean, he's telegraphed a lot of things. This is America's golden age.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's dropped so many breadcrumbs.
Brother, he's dropped loaves of bread. That's not even breadcrumbs anymore. Okay. So he's in the process of reformatting the entire American economy. Peter Navarro came out and totally blew away the lamestream media. And Peter's a friend. He's like, hey, folks, you were so wrong on your job numbers. Here's what really happened. While you were so busy bashing President Trump, he was busy adding over 100,000 jobs to this country. $50 billion in new investment in plants that are coming back to the United States that had bought into this whole globalization thing. Why is the trip to China so important? Let's go back to that for just a second. China's economy is imploding. They need America. Okay, so why would you attack America? Why do you really want to go to war with America when you don't have to? By the way, I think that I'd love to be able to talk to General Flynn about this, but we've talked before about 5th generation warfare, which is warfare for the mind. What's 6th generation? I think that it is war without a shot being fired. And that is electronic warfare, where with a couple of keystrokes, you shut down an electrical grid. That's probably the war of tomorrow. You don't need to blow stuff up. You just shut stuff down.
Right.
So you shut down the electrical grid, what happens? Your pipelines that move fuel around the country shut down.
Yeah.
Your water pumps that move fresh water to the people shut down. Refrigeration that keeps food available to people on a moment's notice shuts down. So I think that what President Trump is doing to reformat America's economic stability goes back to solid Hamiltonian economics, where we focus on, once this whole thing in Iran is concluded and we leave the European Union to its own devices, they have to sort out what's going to happen in the Strait of Hormuz. We get back to national banking under sovereign control, fair and reciprocal trade, promotion of peace, opposition to drug and human trafficking, investment in mental capital, and no limits on growth, economic GDP with our neighbors. We help our neighbors because a country that helps its neighbors grow also grows. It's the blessing that we give others and we are in turn blessed.
Yeah.
That is a very biblically based ethos. And I think that is what America was built on in the first place. So for these godless commies that want to say, oh, no, we can't have no God. It's like, okay, tell you what, why don't you go live in a godless country like Iran? And let me know how that works out for you.
Exactly. So you don't see us moving into 7 leaderships around the world where we're going to have 7 leaders that are basically, if you got less cooks in the kitchen, I think you might come up with a better soup, if you will. No. So do you think we don't take over Mexico? We don't take over Central America? We don't take over Argentina and so on?
No, we don't need to. I mean, first of all, Milei is doing a fabulous job in Argentina. Okay. Scheinbaum in Mexico. I think she's going to start looking around going, these guys are onto something. Now, of course, Mexico's got just incredible corruption.
Right.
So that's going to be an issue. But you look at El Salvador, Nicaragua, now Venezuela, you look at Colombia, these countries are beginning to, and this doesn't happen overnight, bro. These companies are beginning to adopt the kind of economic system that is not winning at the expense of somebody else. It is winning by investing in neighbors, in being a part of a community that is dedicated to helping each other. That is where I think President Trump is taking this country. And we're not used to that. That's why you've got people who insist on just holding on to power like this. His most powerful thing that he's doing is this. What did he say in his 2016 inaugural address? I am returning the government to the people.
Yes.
And in that moment, all of the agents for foreign governments that are within our government, all of the people who are obsessed with maintaining their grip on what little power they have, whether they got it righteously or not, they suddenly saw the people as the enemy. That's why we saw the weaponization of government against people like myself.
Yeah.
I mean, did you know that I'm in the Arctic Frost person of interest list?
It doesn't surprise me. But
why? Because on November 30th, 2020, I had the temerity to suggest that perhaps the Maricopa County election was irredeemably compromised.
Yeah.
And took 10 and a half hours of testimony to prove it.
Right. And where did it go?
Well, pop some popcorn, brother.
Yeah.
Sit back and enjoy the show.
Are we going to see arrests this year? Are we going to see people in handcuffs in 2026? Yes or no?
So,
and who does it start with?
I'm going to give you a qualified answer.
Typical politician.
No, I'm going to take my politics hat off and put on my Election Fairness Institute hat. We have furnished a great deal of information on money laundering and election tampering to a number of organizations, including the Department of Justice. The DOJ has all the information that it needs to have to prosecute those responsible for the irredeemably compromised elections of 2016, 2020, and 2024. And the midterm 2022, where Kerry Lake, myself, and Abe Hamadeh were basically robbed by an election flipping system. That's why Maduro's capture and the seizure of all their equipment in Venezuela was so important. And yes, the Arizona Senate that had in its possession electronic material important to the case is fully cooperating with the Department of Justice.
Wow.
When will we see arrest? After a grand jury issues indictments. When will that be? Keep your powder dry. It's coming, but I'm not at liberty to discuss it.
You have inside information that you're not allowed to discuss.
I have information that I am not at liberty to confirm or deny.
Gotcha. Fair enough.
I can say this. Here's a teaser.
I love teasers.
How does a candidate for office in Tennessee receive 80,000 individual contributions to his campaign? This is a state office, a legislative office. How does he receive over 80,000 contributions from Connecticut?
Good question.
Dude's running for a seat in Tennessee, receives contributions, over 80,000 of them, from another state. And when you contact the donors, they have no record of giving to that guy.
Have they reached a level of delusional that borders mental illness?
No, I think they are so secure in the fact that they have paid off so many people for so long that they own the system.
They're in for a rude awakening, my friend. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about North Korea. North Korea has been awfully quiet throughout this whole thing. And I want to know what you know about North Korea. Is there anything going on behind the scenes of North Korea? Is Rocket Man just going to comply, or are we going to switch him out and put another fat man that knows how to do shit right?
If I were going to comment on that, I would be, I don't have any knowledge about that situation. What I can speculate on, I think an educated guess, the fact that Donald Trump is on Chinese soil with 17 business leaders, and I'm not talking about the little guys. I think that sends a very strong message to Rocket Man. You better just cool your jets there, buddy.
Yeah.
Because if we are able to find uranium in Iraq in a tunnel we can find a fat guy with a bad haircut wearing a black suit.
It's got diabetes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
These despots, and you've asked a good question, Mel. These despots around the world, they think they're untouchable.
Oh, yeah.
They really do. They believe it.
How about Colombia? Colombia, I understand, is ready to comply and play ball because they realize that there's really no chess moves on the board. Chile, same thing, etc. Mexico, she's probably going to come to her senses soon. This whole thing is going to come unraveled, but it's not going to come unraveled when you and I want. It's going to come in time. Do you see maybe the bulk of the reset? Because this all goes right back to the reset, right? Do you see maybe the bulk of the reset happening in 2030? Is that a possibility?
Like I said before, this is going to be a slow motion. It's kind of like the tide coming in and the tide going out. It'll be slow motion. I mean, here's a great example. Let me revisit the idea of when we help our neighbors, we help ourselves.
Correct.
Okay. Now, this is going to be coming at it from Mexico's position. So I have advocated for quite a while, and Congressman Paul Gosar has advocated for this as well. A little bit different way of getting there. But if you take a look at Arizona's border, we are not far, the western part of Arizona is not far away from the Sea of Cortez. President Sheinbaum, what would you think about redrawing the southern border of Arizona to take in 100 statute miles, 120 kilometers, whatever you want to call it, that includes the Sea of Cortez and all the land between the current border of Arizona and the Sea of Cortez? In exchange, we will give you fresh water and electricity in perpetuity. That would now energize a whole bunch of northern Mexico, not just with electricity, but water. Look at what Israel has done to create a paradise with desal water. You desalinate the water, mix it with the right minerals, and you're able to grow crops and feed people. You got a whole bunch of land between Arizona and the Sea of Cortez that is not tillable. It's basically former ocean bottom. Put up, I don't know, how about a 200 gigawatt solar farm that goes from Arizona to the Sea of Cortez that you can see from outer space? And you generate so much electricity that you're able to energize all of northern Mexico. That's what I'm talking about when I say, when you take care of your neighbor, you're also taking care of yourself. Now, the United States probably would not be interested in turning over a bunch of capital to Mexico to get it done. We, of course, would want to control the capital and whatever investments are there, form a corporation that would be able to make good on the commitments. I mean, that's just one example. That's probably a 10-year project from the day we say yes to the time we're pumping water and pushing juice. Okay. Mm-hmm. But that's the kind of thing that I think President Trump is in the process of setting up in both North and South America, to have these kinds of agreements, these trade agreements. And I don't want to be please don't think I'm trying to put words in President Trump's mouth. I'm not. But this is a shining example of the possible. That man is constantly in pursuit of the possible. That's why he's in China right now. Xi Jinping, dude, you're hanging by a thread, and we know it. You've got record unemployment amongst the young. You got a Chinese Communist Party that is fighting within itself. You can't feed everybody. You're obsessed with controlling everybody's lives. What's it getting at? Your country's imploding. Now, he might say, well, America's all effed up. Yeah. Your country's imploding too, because you got a bunch of wackos that are running different institutions, all engaged in DEI and all this other crap, instead of pursuing a meritocracy. Well, you got two guys that are leaders of the two biggest economies in the world at a table talking with each other. I think it's also telling that President Trump invited Vladimir Putin to join G20 in Florida at the end of the year.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. You know, talking about the deportation, I want to talk about deportation for a little bit. We still got, I don't know how many millions of illegal aliens in the U.S. I know that ICE is doing a fabulous job. Obviously, they're a very controversial group. But I would love to see in the deportation, Ilhan Omar. What do you think, when you think that deportation happens?
I think she's going to be prosecuted, convicted, and deported. When do I think that's going to happen? Well, we got 2 years to see to it.
Yeah. Well, Donald Trump's closing in on year number 2, right? What comes after Trump, you think? Do you like J.D. Vance, for example? I personally am very cautious about J.D. Vance. I'm
cautious about everybody. You know, what I do know is that President Trump has absolutely no interest in being a king. He'll be glad to exit the stage after he has completed the work that he believes the American people elected him to do.
But he has to put everybody. He has to put everybody away, because if he doesn't, his family his family is going to be persecuted forever.
Absolutely agree with you. Now, your question is, what's the next act in this drama? I don't know that it's going to be a full field, but I'm pretty sure that Mike Pence, pervert that he is, has now been summarily dismissed. I think that the president is in the process. That's one of the things I love about this man. He's in the process of developing his replacements. A good leader is always looking at, am I preparing for the exit from my role? And what am I going to do to prepare somebody to step in and take my place that shares my priorities, that shares my vision, that is able to build on the success that I've already experienced? Who do I know? Could be JD Vance. I don't know. I was never a Marco Rubio fan.
Neither was us. He's saying everything right. He's doing everything right. He looks like he could be a leader. Right?
I tell you what, I think Marco Rubio is a convert.
What do you mean?
I think that he was
converted.
When I say convert, I'm saying he was a fence-sitting, flag-waving, which way's the wind blowing kind of guy.
Right.
I don't see that in Marco Rubio anymore. I now see a decisive man who does not mince words. And I don't believe that that's all his speechwriters, because when he says something, it seems to be with conviction. That is a change from 6 years ago.
100,000%. I agree with you. But the thing is, we've been electing politicians for 125 years. How's that worked out for us?
Well, until we elected Donald Trump.
So is this guy a changed man? He's done a 180-degree turn the other way. He's going to come in and continue the pattern of Donald Trump. I have a little bit of, it's a hard pill to swallow for Mel Carmine. I'm going to tell you for that. Now, I personally think, and I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. I think a guy that runs a company with hundreds of thousands of people, like a Eric Trump, is more than qualified to take over Daddy's footsteps. One, I believe even Trump Jr., even though he doesn't have a bride yet, but I think there's one in the works that looks like there's going to be a marriage, etc. I think there's a date for him to be married at the White House, etc. I believe he would also be in line to be able to run this country, because we need another 8 years of this trajectory. We cannot fix this in 2 years.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a break. Not sure who that would be. If Eric Trump were interested, I think Eric, sorry, Don Jr., but I think Eric would probably be the better choice of the two, just for a whole host of reasons. And it's nothing personal against anybody. I don't know that the replacement for Mr. Trump, President Trump, has arrived on the world stage yet. But remember how he arrived, out of the sky blue. Nobody saw it coming. So
that's my next.
Hey, oh no. Hey, I got a hard stop in 11 minutes. Just wanted to make you aware.
I'm watching. I'm looking to watch.
Okay.
But
I don't know who that would be, but it's not going to be Mark Finchem. I'm available to serve my countrymen if I'm called upon, but I don't think that's my lane, Mel.
If you ever decide to become president, and we get behind you because we would, and you need a consigliere, just remember that this Sicilian consigliere is available.
Well, between Leo Biasucci and Sonny Borelli and Mel Carmine,
I would be ruthless.
I think I have the family behind me.
Yeah.
No, there has been talk about, and I'm not putting any stock in this, okay? But Arizona is likely to pick up 2 congressional seats. I really do not have any desire to walk into Congress. I think my role is in the state. I think that's really where things get done.
Right.
It's at the state level. That's where the streets get fixed, where we negotiate about making sure everybody's got water and power, and you keep government small. I mean, we're going through this right now in Arizona. We just, as a legislature, we've passed 3 budgets that the governor has vetoed all 3 of them because she wants to expand government and take people's money.
Right.
What we did in the last budget, we delivered a $1.2 billion tax reduction to the people of the state of Arizona. And the Democrats, all they can say is, oh, this is helping nobody but the billionaires. All right, stop a second. We have 15 billionaires in the state of Arizona. That's it. And by the way, they don't benefit a whole lot from this. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you, 1.7 million families do, with an average increase in their tax return, their refund of $3,700. The Arizona legislature decided we're not going to take away what HR 1 gave back to the people. The president's big, beautiful bill was a major tax cut.
Right.
And what we did through tax conformity is saw to it that the state government did not take away what the federal government gave back to the people. I'd vote for that all day long.
I know you got a few minutes to go, but we have a few more questions that I think the audience are going to absolutely enjoy. So I think of questions I don't think a lot of people do. Are we going to see the shrinking of government by 95% because artificial intelligence can make everything so proficient that we don't need all of this governance? Or will we see that in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
I think that we'll see the shrinking of government personnel. And I don't mean shrinking people. I mean the shrinking the full-time equivalents, the FTEs, the number of FTEs that are necessary. If we really want to shrink government, we need to do away with regulations that make absolutely no sense. Here's a grand example. The Department of Education, as you know, is on its way out the door. We have heard from school teachers for the last 12 years I've been involved in state government. If you really want to make a dent in making my day more effective, lift the government regulation framework on K through 12 education so that we don't spend our time checking boxes and being compliant with federal regulations. We actually spend our time teaching. That's an example. You do away with the regulatory framework.
Right.
You do away with regulatory compliance, and you essentially you create more time in the day for people to engage in true service work as opposed to compliance work.
Right.
That's where I think we make a big difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do believe that with AI, we're going to see a reduction in the federal workforce. It won't be necessary. What I really want to see is a reduction in the number of lawyers.
Well, that's coming. Artificial intelligence makes everything obsolete. Lawyers, doctors, real estate agents, engineers, it's over. I mean, I'm designing, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'll come up with an idea and I'll say, design me a thumbnail about X, Y, and Z, and I'll put in some verbiage in there. And it designs the most amazing thumbnail that a guy that, works in graphics cannot do that good of a job, and it does it in seconds. Okay. So there is a lot of disruption coming from AI, and you can't stop it. Let's talk about, while we're on the subject of shrinking the government, I know the IRS is not part of the government. They're not federal. They are from Puerto Rico. They are a corporation. They're illegal. They are thugs. They are a mafia. They should be arrested, et cetera, et cetera. I despise them with every fiber of my being. The IRS and land taxes, are they going to go away?
Eventually, yes. The IRS will go away. As far as taxes on land, I don't know.
I don't feel like you own anything if you have to lease your land from the government. There are other ways of collecting taxes, whether it be it through sales taxes, gasoline taxes, booze taxes, cigarette taxes, et cetera. Right?
Well, I'm a fan of use taxes. I mean, if you're going to use it, you go buy a boat, you're the one using the boat. Why should I have to pay the taxes on it?
Sure, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
now, last but not least, before I let you go, because we've got 4 minutes, 3 minutes, I'm sure you know who Louis Herms is. Louis Herms, who's running for governor of California.
yeah.
He is being shunned by mainstream media, and I've given him some great ideas, I think some of which he's going to run with. One, which is it's not a secret, it's already out there. I told him to get, 400 or 500 podcasters to go in live on a debate and say, this man is registered in all 39 counties in California. Why is he not allowed to be on stage with you? What are you so afraid of? Okay. While they're live.
I'm not following the California race, so I can't help you with that one, Mel.
Okay. I'm a fan of Louis. I think he's got balls the size of King Kong. I think California needs him. I think anybody who's out there, I'll leave his link down below. His links on all of my videos. Make sure you go support the guy. If you like people that are in part of that 17th letter movement, if you like people that want to shut down your 17 illegal taxation agencies in your state immediately, day one, if you want to see arrests, Louis Herms is absolutely your guy. No question about it.
Well, I got to run, Mel, but if people want to know more about me, if they want to support me, they can go to votefinchem.com. That's VOTEFIM.com.
And we'll leave you
if they would like to, all right, if they would like to follow my Substack, Mark Finchem at Substack, or I'm sorry, markfinchem.substack.com.
Yeah.
I don't go crazy. I put out an article maybe once a week, but it's usually about things that you're not going to hear about in the normal political discourse. It's things, sometimes it's inside baseball, sometimes it's just random thoughts about Well, that was interesting. What really happened? Yeah. So thank you, Mel, for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I'm doing
Can't
something
wait to see you again, brother.
Yeah, I'm doing something huge with crypto. I'll let you know. I'll let you know when I let the cat out of the bag. Huge.
All right.
Huge. Much bigger
All
than
right.
the Vegas thing. And Tube 1776 is coming.
All right.
We're going to correct the wrong very, very quickly. Thank you, Senator. We'll see you on the next one.
God bless you, brother.